Hello and welcome. My name is Inge Patch, and today I want to introduce you to the idea of the common good metrics with a focus for social entrepreneurs and social responsible businesses, and what you can take out of this and how does it work actually. So the economy for the common good is a movement which originated, I would say, from Austria, Germany, but is meanwhile happening in many countries all over the world. So with a focus on Europe, but there are also meanwhile projects outside of Europe happening. And it's basically an open source idea, so the basic idea stays the same, but then there are like different tools which have been developed, which can be used and adopted to the local context, which I have, for example, done for a social business fund in Nepal. So what are some of the main ideas behind it? And I want to use the words of Christian Felber, one of the masterminds behind the idea, saying, yes, a business needs profit, but same like a body needs blood. So there needs to be a certain amount of profit in a business, same as there needs to be a certain amount of blood in our body. But beyond 7 liters, there is no use of blood in our body. And same beyond a certain percentage of profit, there is no use for it in order for the organization to strive, And rather than looking into profit and all the financial means, which can be a helpful thing to monitor with using a balance sheet or profit and loss or other different indicators, the common good is suggesting to saying, let's put our focus on the measurement of how is our social impact doing. So how is the well-being of all the people involved as different stakeholders, as well as nature doing? And by putting our focus on this, we focus our attraction to something different, and therefore our energy automatically goes also a bit more in saying, how can we improve the well-being on everyone who is in touch with our organization? And in order to do so, over many years, various organizations have developed, like for themselves, it has been like a grassroots movement saying, okay, really, there were organizations who wanted to show how they do common good, and they have developed this so-called common good metrics. And the common good metrics has, on the one side, it looks into different values, and on the other side, it looks into different stakeholders. So it deals with the idea, how is human dignity, how is solidarity and social justice, how is environmental sustainability, and how is transparency and co-determination being handled. And it looks on this in regard to suppliers, owners, equity and financial service providers, employees, customers and business partners, as well as the social environment is overall. And from this, we can derive then these 20 sets of indicators, such as A1, human dignity in the supply chain, or C2, self-determined working arrangements, for example. And then when doing such a matrix, you can achieve like 1,000 points in the full matrix. And every of the indicator is weighed in a different format. So depending on what type of business you have. So, and then again, every indicator, there is 2 ways. You can either do a full balance sheet or a compact balance sheet. If you do the full balance sheet, several indicators would have sub-indicators. So rather than answering 1 question, you would answer 3 or 4 questions and then compile, or so to say, take the summary of the whole thing. So let's have a look at one of these indicators. I have picked as an example B1, ethical positioning in relation to financial resources. So how is human dignity treated in regard to owners, equity, and financial service providers? So every indicator is then evaluated. So either every indicator or each sub-indicator is evaluated on this step, saying baseline, getting started, advanced, experienced, and exemplary. And you can achieve from 0 to 10 points, depending on where you find yourself in the qualitative evaluation, sometimes also quantitative, but mainly qualitative. So you make a description whether you have achieved something fully or how many suppliers do something. So let's have a look at the 3 sub-indicators of B1, which is B1.1, B1.2, and B1.3, and then eventually also show you how does it look like in the compact balance sheet. So the first sub-indicator of B1 is asking the question about equity and the equity ratio because of all the systemic implications, which, for example, equity capital has in comparison to having loans. And therefore, they are mainly looking into the equity ratio, so which can be easily calculated for every organization, basically. And then you see the baseline is saying share capital is paid up or brought in. So you bring in the money you actually said is your share capital, and the equity ratio meets the minimum requirements. So whatever law is asking you to bring in, you do that, Then, for example, you would get 3 points for being advanced if you say you have the equity ratio, which is the industry level. So whatever in your industry, be it hotel business or agriculture or education is the standard, you have at least this. And then an exemplary way would be saying the equity ratio is exemplary within this industry. So you have really high equity ratio, which might mean for some industries that it's like 100%, and for others that you at least have like 50-60%. The second sub-indicator would ask the question regarding debt and where do you take debt from? So the baseline would be saying debt repayment period aligned to the period of depreciation of assets to be financed up to a maximum of 14 years. So you don't have any longer debt repayment than you have actually the depreciation. So this is in an accounting and in a profit and loss statement, like keeping the balance. And advanced would be saying, okay, you have started to have some solidarity financing from stakeholders. So the financing is done through customers, clients, etc., etc. And you have started to have some loans from an ethical bank, and you started to repay conventional loans. And then in exemplary behavior would have mainly solidarity financing. And then where this is not possible, you would have only loans from an ethical bank, so that you make sure that the money and the interest rate and so on is really going into a positive action, also impact down the line. So just being in a normal bank, which is not having any other portfolio, might not be enough. And then the third one is also going in this direction, saying, okay, you have, like the baseline is saying your financial partner is transparent about the risk of their products and services, which should be really actually the baseline. And then here again, exemplary behavior, in order to have like 4 points for this, you have actually a financial partner which only provides ethical, sustainable financial service, which in Germany is achievable because there are meanwhile several ethical banks available, which you can easily get an account. In Austria, it's a bit harder because there is not many ethical banks, and mainly they're only for private customers. So therefore, it always also depends a bit on the context in which you are, whether you even can achieve the highest points. So in comparison, if you do the compact balance sheet, you wouldn't have to answer all 3 questions separately and find your level, but you simply look into, like, you see every level is like a summary of what we have just discussed. So exemplary would be the company equity ratio is exemplary within the industries, predominantly solidarity financing by stakeholders, and loans from ethical banking. And all the financial partners are providing only ethical, sustainable financial service. So see, basically it's the same basic idea, but rather than you think about E3 questions separately, you look at it at once and say, okay, I am somewhere here, and that's how you give your points. And once you give your points, this will derive then in a percentage. So the points you can also say points between 0 and 1, or you can say 0 and 100%. And then because of the type of industry you're in, so let's say you're a very supplier dominant industry, let's say like a trade company, then you would have a lot of weight on the suppliers and probably a bit less on the employees, because you might only have 1 or 2 employees. Or let's say you're in an industry which is very service heavy, so you have a lot of stuff, but probably less supply impact. So you would have more points here in employees. So this is something which, when you have this balance sheet, will be happening automatically. And then you would have something like this, where you say you have then 5 out of 55 points in human dignity and the supply chain, and you have 1 out of 14 points in ethical positioning of financial resources. But maybe you're really doing very well in self-determined working arrangements, where you actually have 81 out of 81 points, as in this example. And then up on the top, so up here, you will find then a total balance, which is in this case around 480 points out of 1,000 points. And I think this would be as a starter. If you start off with your company, having a look at this first thing you happen, you're actually doing quite well. So best companies nowadays have 700 to 800 points, as far as I know, where there is no company I know which has achieved actually 1,000 points or coming close to it. Because, and it's also not necessary. It's like there are certain decisions, like Paude is actually saying, well, when it comes to ownership, we can be very open when it comes to creating great work environment and being very environmentally friendly, but ownership is our thing, and we don't want to have like company ownership of all the employees. And this is a fair thing to decide, I would say. So how can you use this tool now? So the first one is saying you simply use it as an internal development tool. So when you're a startup, you could actually, when you draft your business plan, have a look into the indicators and saying, okay, what are the best practices they have? And how could I maybe design a company which is already going into this direction? And how could I maybe include in my 5 or 10 years plan saying, okay, how can I increase my positive impact slowly over time? So this can be done easily. You can always download it, and it's open source, and you can always use it also to design any kind of report you want to make without that you go very official about it. The next level would be saying, okay, you really make this peer evaluation process, which can be accompanied by an advisor, or you do it on your own. And for this, you actually search 4 or 5 other organizations which are also interested in doing a common good balance sheet, and you form like a working group. So every organization is individually going through the balance sheet and is preparing and writing up how the report would look like with the documentation and everything. And then in peer sessions, each organization, they would have a look at each other report, and they would give feedback. And eventually, like through this peer evaluation, you would find like your final grading, so to say, or your final evaluation. And that's what you can publish then as peer evaluated common good balance sheet. Or if you want to go super professional about it, this is mainly for bigger companies, and once you're really up into business, I would say, you can actually get an external auditor. So there are independent auditors by the economy of the common good who come then and really double check with the material you provide for them whether the numbers you gave is justified. And then you can even claim you're externally audited and therefore make an impact. So one of the ideas of the common good economy is to actually say, let's take this and let's make this a compulsory evaluation for every business. And let's have this integrated into every business standard model of what we do. And then we as a customer would have the benefit that we would have. For example, would be possible. This is a picture made by the Spanish group saying we could have a sticker like this on every product, which is then indicating very simply visible for us how many points or how many percentage has this organization reached. So I know, okay, this organization makes a lot of positive impact on many scales towards many stakeholders. If I want to know more, I can simply scan the barcode and I would see, it is really doing excellent work in regard to its suppliers, for example, and it's doing very good work in regard to employees. There is still space for improvement when it comes to customers, for example, and customers' involvement, but then you can get the differentiated picture. But eventually with this brief sticker, when I go into supermarket, I have like a one label, which really gives me an indicator of all the things, and I don't have to have 50 labels anymore. So this is one of the visions they have. Another one would be to be tax exempted, or to have a lower tax rate the higher you're up there, or to have a preferential treatment when it comes to public tenders, so public purchasing, that public authorities are required to always buy from an organization which has a higher impact, for example. So these are some of the visions the group has, and I'm very curious to see where will it go. And I hope I have given you also a short insight on what you can do with it, how you can use it, and how it can help you improving your impact. I hope you have enjoyed my video. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye bye.